I remember the tremors. At first, they were just whispers beneath my feet, a subtle vibration like the earth was sighing. But then the sound erupted into chaos, a rumbling growl, the mountain groaning alive in an instant. Crumbling rock rained down, each stone a harbinger of something unspeakable. Distant screams wrapped around me, threads of panic pulling taut, tightening my chest. Clay dust filled the air, thick and suffocating, the bitter smell of wet earth stinging my nostrils. My breath came in gasps, shallow and desperate. The world around me lost all sense of direction. There was only noise, an overwhelming cacophony of cracking stone, the rush of sliding earth, the frantic cries of my companions. I felt the ground shift like it was alive, as if it sought to swallow us whole. There was no time for thought, only instinct. I turned, scrambling, searching for something, anything to anchor me in this tumult. Each movement was an echo of fear, the instinctual drive to survive flooding my veins. The stifling darkness rolled in, a cloak that pressed heavy against my skin, a silence waiting to envelop the chaos like an uninvited guest. My heart raced, racing against the rhythm of falling debris. I stumbled, the ground beneath me slippery, uncertain. What little I could see through the storm of dust and panic felt surreal, dreamlike. A spiral of motion, limbs flailing, faces flashing by, fleeting glimpses of comrades lost in the instant. The world had become a theater of the absurd, each moment distorted, exaggerated by fear. Everything felt distant. Time stretched out like a long, drawn-out breath I couldn't release. It all unfolded in fragments. I reached out, grasping for a hand that slipped through my fingers, as if the universe was mocking my desperation. And then the sound shifted, became less a clamor and more a solemn lull. The screams faded, swallowed by the dark. The ground ceased its shaking. I was alone. What enveloped me next was a profound silence, profound yet empty, a void that resonated deeper than any noise had before. It was an absence that bore down on me, heavy and cold, devoid of life, suffocating in its stillness. I felt myself slip away, into darkness, into nothingness, without even a final gasp to mark my departure from the world I once knew. Here I float, lingering between breaths, grasping at the echoes of a life once vibrant, now replaced by a silence that folds around me like a shroud. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat, trapped in the chasm that now defined my existence. All I could do was succumb to the weight of it all, the quietest whisper of being no more. And then, for a long time, there was only nothing, a space where memory and reality blurred, where the essence of who I was faded into the abyss. I drift in this cavern of silence, the echoes of who I was slipping through the cracks in my mind like smoke. My name is Pedro. I was a miner, a reluctant hero in my own story, clad in the dust of the earth I toiled to support my family. I can still see their faces, illuminated by the soft glow of a lamp, shadows dancing on the walls of our modest home. I remember the laughter. The warmth in my heart was tangible as I held my little boy Santiago, bouncing him on my knee. His giggles filled up every empty space in our small living room, a melody that followed me into the depths of the mind. Just a father, just a dreamer, I often told myself. But dreams have a way of unraveling into threads of longing, especially when the weight of responsibility presses on your shoulders. That day, I felt an irksome whisper of anxiety as the sun crowned the horizon. It flickered like an ill omen in my gut, an uninvited feeling nestling alongside the hope of bringing home a few extra coins. I brushed it aside, hoping the routine of morning coffee and camaraderie would dull the edge of my worry. "Pedro," my colleague called, a mirthful smile stretched across his face. "You ready for another day in paradise?" The jovial banter grounded me, as if laughter could ward off the unseen specters lurking just beyond our day-to-day existence. Moments like those were fleeting, vibrant flashes of normalcy, stark against the impendent shadow. I can still taste the coffee, rich and bitter, filling the space where my nerves whispered doubt. I watched my colleagues share stories around a break table, their voices intertwining like a chorus of hope. But even then, in that warm embrace of laughter, there were murmurs, glances exchanged, deep frowns of unease, conversations of tremors, whispers of unstable earth. It's just minor superstition,
I told myself, echoing the dismissive laughter thrown at the warnings. I was determined not to let fate dictate my life. I tucked the unease into the recesses of my mind as we gathered our tools and helmets, setting my sights on the work ahead, a mission much larger than myself. Underneath the earth, the sounds transformed. The hum of machinery pulsing through the rock felt familiar, the air thick with moisture and grit. I felt alive down there amid the tunnels that echoed with generations of labor. But even then, shadowed were the dread-laden thoughts of what if. I took a moment during the lunch break to write a letter, my hands trembling ever so slightly. A letter to Santiago, to tell him about the world I wanted for him, the dreams I held for his future. I wanted him to know that even if the earth swallowed me whole, he would always be my beacon, my reason to rise each morning. "You're always with me, my son," I wrote, words etched into the paper, each stroke a heartbeat. I felt the weight of the ink, the weight of my worries. I tucked it into my worn pocket, the rough edges scratched against my fingertips, a reminder of promises unfulfilled. The moments just before a storm linger in the memory, sweet yet foreboding. The laughter dwindled, leaving behind an air thick with tension. I remember glancing at Jorge, his brow knitted, voice lowered. "Something feels off today." I waved off his concern with a smile. "Let's just get through the day, buddy." But deep down, I couldn't shake that sinister feeling crawling along my spine. The signals of the universe screamed at me, "Danger ahead, Pedro." But I traded instincts for routine, hoping that normalcy would stay on our side. The shifts in tone, casualness before chaos. I was naive to think that monotony could guard against fate. I kept my thoughts to myself, unwilling to share the weight of my disquiet, unwilling to burden anyone else. Even when the evening sun filtered through the mine entrance as we began to ascend back to the world above, I didn't sense impending doom in my bones. I walked through the last stretch of dark earth with muted certainty, fingers brushing the cool walls, every footstep resonating with a sacred rhythm, so alive, so vibrant. Yet future moments felt irrelevant, their significance sparking only as echoes of what lay ahead. In those last moments, my focus lay on promises, the tiny thread connecting me to Santiago and the others back home. I refused to entertain thoughts of what could go wrong. I wanted to believe routine would shield us, wrap us in safety like a thick blanket against the coming night. But that night, as the stars blinked in the vastness above, I was oblivious. Little did I know that the light tears the fabric of this very existence, that fate was ready to snatch all I held dear. And that, it seemed, was the curse of humanity. This dance with destiny, one foot firmly planted in the now, while the other floated on the clouds of possibility, often ignorant of the dark storm gathering just beyond the horizon. The air felt heavy as we descended further into the mine, each step taking us deeper into the embrace of cool, damp earth. It was a familiarity I embraced, yet an undercurrent of unease tugged at the edges of my mind. I brushed it aside, laughing with Marco about another day of toil ahead. "Ready for another adventure?" he teased, his grin bright even in the dim light. But the laughter felt strained against my heart, like a brittle veneer over a dark truth. "Of course," I replied, but the words came out hollow, the niggle in my gut turning into something more palpable, a twist of unease that had no right to manifest in the midst of our jovial banter. My colleagues worked together as a brotherhood, yet I sensed something more profound in the depths of that camaraderie, a shared anxiety that remained unspoken. As we settled into the rhythm of the day, the sound of drills rattling against stone accompanied the chatter, yet I couldn't shake that foreboding feeling. The older miners exchanged glances, their brows furrowed with worry, and whispers about dig sites that hadn't been stable for weeks now. "Did you hear that?" one of them murmured, as another tremor rippled through the ground, barely perceptible, but enough to elevate the tension in the room. "It's nothing," I reassured myself, forcing a smile. But deep down, the words felt like a lie, a feeble shield against the storm brewing around us. I tucked my fears away, unwilling to burden anyone else with my whispers of doubt. As we fell into routine,
Toiling deeper into the earth. During our lunch break, I felt the weight of the crumpled letter in my pocket, a tangible reminder of my commitment to Santiago. I pulled it out, unfolding the worn paper, my heart dancing with the thoughts I'd poured into it, words of love wishing to seep into his future. "You're going to do great things, my son," I had written, my fingers tracing the lines. I wanted him to know that no matter the obstacles, I believed in him, that every moment I climbed into those depths, I was building a path for him. I smiled at the thought, but as I returned, the laughter around me felt more restless, the conversations turning to shadows of the dilemmas we faced underground. A sudden tremor rippled through the rock again, stronger this time. The ground shuddered beneath us, and an urgent whisper of fear flared in my gut. Before I could process it, Marco's voice sliced through the air, rising over the anxiety. "Everyone, we need to go!" Adrenaline surged, and in an instant, the bonds of banter shattered. We raced toward the exit, the sound of despair echoing around us. Metal shrieked against stone, voices cried out, and the dust began to swirl into chaos. The walls groaned, heavy with the weight of the world above. "Keep moving," I shouted, adrenaline pounding through me as memories of my family flared before me, bright and beautiful amidst the darkening chaos. Every step would lead me back to them, to Santiago, to the warmth of home. But each footfall felt heavier, as if the earth conspired to hold us back, to keep us trapped in its grasp. I stumbled over rocks that came loose, the mind fighting against our escape. And with every wrenching tremor, I felt the shadows close in. "Faster, we're almost there," Marco encouraged, but doubt wormed its way into my heart, a creeping realization that something was deeply wrong. Hope mingled with fear as I pushed onward, praying desperately for light to guide our way. The walls shuddered, and light flickered in the distance, a beacon of hope that felt impossibly far away. My breath quickened, fueled both the desire to escape and an instinct screaming that time was running out. But as we tore through the last stretch, the deeper tremor erupted, a spine-chilling roar punctuating the air. Dust choked us, filling our lungs while shadows distorted the world around. I grasped Marco's hand, and his eyes reflected my own fear, a shared acknowledgement that we were caught in an unfolding disaster we could only escape together. Survival didn't just rest in the hands of fate, but demanded fight against the crushing grip of despair. Each heartbeat resonated like a war drum, urging me to hold on to love, to cling to memories, to ensure my promise to Santiago would not be extinguished in this abyss. But destiny seemed particularly cruel in that moment, a bitter twist of fate, and I realized in that fearsome instant just how fragile our existence truly was, how quickly dreams could unravel, leaving only the void behind. I pushed forward, desperate to break free, to reunite with the world I loved before the darkness closed in and swallowed us whole. Amidst the chaos, my heart raced, pumping urgency through my veins, yet time seemed to stretch indefinitely, each second an eternity as we fought our way through the dust and despair. I felt the weight of the mind pressing down on us, but there was a different kind of pressure closing in as well, a pull towards something that was both alluring and frightening. I could almost hear the whispers of the earth beneath me, as if it was alive, as if it knew secrets long forgotten. Then, just as hope flickered faintly, alive in the cracks of despair, I saw it, a glint, a small object on the cold, dark ground. In a moment of desperation, I stopped for a heartbeat, my instinct pulling me back. What was it? The thought whispered in my mind louder than the fear that gripped my throat. I had to know. Just as logic deemed it foolish, the flicker of curiosity overpowered my panic. I bent low, barely able to breathe in the thick cloud of dust. My fingers brushed against a metallic surface, warm against the chill of the mine. Slowly, I pulled it into the dim light. It was a watch. A simple, well-worn wristwatch with its glass cracked and a small engraving on the back that read, "For the moments that matter." I connected to it instantly, the memories flooding back in a torrent. Santiago clutching his little toy watch, pretending to keep time, standing proudly beside me, his innocent laughter echoing in my ears. Every second counts, right?
"Papa?" he had said with those bright, eager eyes. I could see him pull at my sleeve, wanting me to play with him rather than leave for the mine. My throat tightened as anguish choked that brief moment of connection. It was just a watch. Yet, somehow, it felt like a lifeline tethering me to my world, to Santiago and the life I had promised to build for him. "Pedro, no!" Marco shouted, his voice breaking through my reverie, urgency lacing his tone as dust swirled like a tempest around us. "We have to keep moving." I realized I was still kneeling there, dazed, clutching the watch tightly. I glanced back at him, catching the fear in his eyes. Fear for himself, but more so a deep concern for all of us. I stumbled to my feet, shaking off the daze, instinctively knowing that turning back was not an option. "I'm coming," I shouted, sprinting after him, the watch still gripped in my palm. As we pushed further, the trembling of the earth intensified, and panic surged through me like an electric current. The others were ahead, but shadows twisted around us, depthless and foreboding. The weight of uncertainty bore down like a heavy shroud, casting doubt on whether we could make it to the surface. Everyone pushed for light, but my thoughts were tangled in the fabric of memories. I could almost hear Santiago's laughter drifting through the shadows, reminding me that I couldn't just fight for survival. I had to fight for him, for our future together. But as we barreled down the tunnel, all of those dreams felt like wisps of smoke, escaping grasp just as panic began to seep in. Then came another shudder, more violent than before. Sounds of screeching metal filled the air, and I could feel the very walls of the mine quaking in protest, a wild cry echoing my own fears. I glanced nervously at Marco and swallowed hard. "We must be close," I said, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "It doesn't feel right," he gasped, urgency crashing against the heavy air. My mind raced, struggling against the chaos cascading around us. We rounded a corner and spotted the exit ahead, the sun flickering like a distant star, warm and inviting. But just as hope surged, the ground beneath us roared in protest. An earth-shattering crack split the silence, and panic seized our hearts. "Run!" I shouted, bolting forward, feeling the urgency wrap around me like a noose. I could see the light now. It was so close. But as we sprinted for the exit, the mind betrayed us. A boulder fell from above, blocking the narrow tunnel, sealing us within the suffocating darkness. A blinding flash of uncertainty swept over me, and just then, the watch slipped from my grasp, clattering wildly against the ground. "No!" I cried out helplessly, but there was no time. The walls roared as dust thickened in the air, choking us as the world blurred into chaos. We darted, dodging falling debris, scrambling through the choking dust, but the light outside felt like a mirage, always just out of reach. Each footstep reverberated like cries for help, echoes of lament filling my thoughts. But through the cacophony of terror that surrounded us, a singular focus cut through. The promise I made to Santiago, the love radiating from him, filling the void like the sun breaking through the darkest clouds. Even as hope teetered on the precipice of despair, that flicker ignited something inside me. I could not let go. I would find a way, for him. His laughter rose above the chaos, sweet and unfading. And just as I thought my breath would give in to despair, a warmth filled my chest, the memory of my son igniting a fire within me. "I'm coming," I called, rallying myself. We surged against the tide,
desperate to breach the surface. The watch lost, but the memories held, and they would carry me through the darkness. "Keep pushing," I shouted. "We can't stop now." The light was so close, and despite the tremors and rumblings threatening our very lives, with each step I pushed forward for him, for those moments still to come. The boulder crashed down elsewhere, shaking the very foundation of what we were fighting against, but I would not falter. I clung to hope, to love, and pushed through the darkness, propelled by the promise of the light. And somewhere, through the cloud of fear and uncertainty, I knew it would guide me back to the world waiting to embrace me once more. With every ounce of strength, we pressed on through the relentless chaos, the walls trembling violently around us, and I could feel despair clawing at my back. "We are almost there," I shouted, the words propelled by raw determination. "Just a little further!" The exit loomed ahead, a thin slice of light in a world overshadowed by darkness, illuminating the way like a beacon of hope. My heart pounded as we surged forward, but each step grew heavier, weighed down by the oppressive reality of our situation. The air felt thick, almost too heavy to breathe, fear coiling tightly around my throat. In that moment, every scream of anguish echoed around us as a reminder that time was not on our side. "Move," Marco urged, sweat beading on his forehead, desperation etched in every feature. But then, silence hung in the air, an eerie stillness that felt surreal against the backdrop of our frantic escape. I turned back, glancing over my shoulder at the shadows closing in, as if the mine itself was trying to swallow us whole. And it was in that brief silence that I felt the absence of my watch, the connection to Santiago severed. "Get to the light," I yelled, forcing myself to focus on the moment, abandoning the idea of retrieval. A deep rumble echoed. It sent a new wave of terror coursing through my veins, yet I would not let it consume me. The laughter of my son, a sweet melody, washed over me like sunlight through the trees, a constant reminder of what I was fighting for. Each breath was a testament to my resolve, not just to save myself, but to ensure that I would return to him, to the promise I made, a promise echoing like a heartbeat in the depths of my soul. Then came another tremor, stronger this time, shaking the very ground beneath us. "Hold on," I yelled, but the deafening roar of collapsing earth drowned out my voice. I stopped forward, every ounce of my being pushing as if I could will us through this wall of despair. My heart raced as pieces of debris rained down, like angry raindrops seeking retribution for leaving the darkness. Each moment felt like a war, one that could end with either victory or cataclysm. As we reached the threshold, the light beckoned like a cherished embrace, radiant and warm. But the ground erupted beneath us, sending jagged shards of rock tumbling down from above. "Together," Marco shouted, grabbing my arm, pulling me forward. The sun danced ahead of us, igniting our spirits, igniting dreams of freedom and reunion. I could almost feel Santiago's small arms wrapped around my neck, his heartbeat syncopated with my own, lending strength to my weary soul. "Keep going, don't look back." And just like that, we hurtled toward the light. The sweet embrace of a new beginning awaited us just beyond the horizon of shadows. With a final surge, we lunged toward the light, colliding with it like a wave crashing against the shore. A sense of euphoria swept over me, fueled by the desperate hope of the world outside. My heart thundered as we burst through the narrow opening, colliding with fresh air that felt foreign but reviving. But just as we crossed the threshold, the earth let out a ferocious growl, a cacophony that echoed our anguish and fear. I turned back, watching helplessly as the mine began to collapse, darkness swallowing the light behind us. "No, we can't lose anyone else," I screamed, but the walls fell away like autumn leaves in a storm, a reminder of the fragility of life. But we were outside. The ground felt unsteady beneath my feet, a bittersweet reminder of our narrow escape. The sun bathed us in warmth. Cool air greeted us like a long-lost friend, overwhelming my senses in a way that made it feel almost surreal. But then, my heart began to race again, pulling me toward a different urgency, a longing to reach Santiago, to be back with him in the embrace of our home. I staggered forward, gasping for breath, my heart pounding fiercely, longing for the familiarity of laughter, the comfort of love. I felt dizzy, reality spinning around me as joy battled alongside exhaustion. "Pedro, we made it!" Marco gasped, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, but his eyes sparkled with relief and disbelief. "We're alive," I managed, yet the weight of uncertainty pressed down heavily. But what about the others? I looked around, scanning the space frantically. Distant cries emerged, shrieks lost to the smothering distance, and my heart sank further as I thrashed about in panic. "Help them!" I shouted, but Marco laid a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "We can't go back, Pedro." His voice trembled as he glanced back at the mine, a daunting reality spilling over the edge of hope. "We have to find help first." A surge of anger mixed with anguish flared within me, an urge to turn and run back.
To go back into the depths where I had just fought tooth and nail to escape. But they're still inside. My voice crackled with emotion, the weight of lost lives looming. But with great resolve, Marco shook his head. "We can't save everyone. We have to find help to pull them out." Deep inside, I knew he was right, but guilt clawed at my chest, the memories still fresh, haunting whispers telling me that I could have done more. The watch slipped through my fingers into that abyss, and I felt the horror of it racing back at me. But then, amid the turmoil, I caught sight of something in the distance, a figure standing at the edge of the forest, waving frantically. My heart surged, not just with hope, but with urgency. "Help!" I shouted, renewed by the sight, urging Marco to follow. "To the figure, we have to go." With firm strides, we headed towards the help that awaited us, uncertainty intertwining with urgency as we rushed forward. Every heartbeat, every echo, a reminder of lives at stake, of promises waiting to be fulfilled. "For Santiago," I muttered under my breath, determination flooding through me. I would not give up. I would find a way back to him, to all of them. This time, I would succeed. As we dashed through the brush, the undergrowth tugged at our clothes, an unwelcome reminder of the chaos that had just unfolded behind us. The weight of guilt and urgency melded within me, twisting my gut into a tightening knot. Marco stayed close, his frantic breaths echoing my own as we approached the figure who stood amidst the trees, their outline becoming clearer with each step. "Help! Please help!" I cried, desperation spilling from my lips as I sprinted closer. As we broke free from the trees, the figure materialized fully. A woman in her early 30s, eyes wide and frantic, a radio crackling to life in her hand. "You're alive! Thank God!" She rushed forward, panic lining her features. "I thought we were too late." "There are still people in the mine," I blurted out, my voice thick with emotion. "We need help now." "I called for rescue teams," she said, her words tumbling over themselves as if trying to repair the chaos inside her. "They said it would take time. They're tracking the seismic activity. There's no telling what's safe anymore." "Time? We don't have time." The reality crashed into me. The mind still whispered with the cries of those trapped inside, and the panic surged again, clawing like a beast awakened. "We found the entrance. We have to go back." Marco wrapped a hand around my forearm, grounding me. "Pedro, listen. If we go back in without help, we could all end up trapped." "No!" I shouted, fighting my instinct for self-preservation. "We can't just wait. They need us." The woman shook her head, anguish spilling over her features.
The mining company has the equipment and the trained personnel. They're on their way. We just have to hold tight until they arrive. Every fiber of my being screamed to move, but the harsh reality of her words rooted me to the spot. I was torn, my loyalty to the friends still inside versus the bitter truth that returning could erase any chance of saving them. And if they don't make it out, Santiago, what if I never see him again? The thought wrapped around my heart like ice, a chill running down my spine. Pedro, Marco's voice cut through the haze of despair. Look at her, she's right. Every minute we waste trying to go back increases the risk. It was as if the world turned silent for a moment, the weight of his plea hanging in the air, desperate and raw. I took a deep breath, but the guilt gnawed fiercely, keeping me from feeling anything but dread, slicing through my resolve. Panic licked at the edges of my composure, and I gripped the straps of my bag, the reality of being the one who survived, while others were swallowed whole, crashing down upon me. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, thoughts colliding in a turmoil of loss as I pondered all the memories that could be left behind. In that bitter moment, doubt crept in. What if they were counting on our return? I had promised Santiago I would be there for him. The anguish of uncertainty carved a heavy weight into my chest. I shifted my gaze toward the trees, where the shadows folded against the light filtering through the branches. We can't just stand here. We have to. Before I could finish, a commotion broke out behind us. I turned to see another figure emerging from the train of trees. A man, clothes dirt-streaked and panic etched across his face.
"Is everyone okay?" he shouted, urgency threading through his words like a lifeline. "We're alive!" The woman ran to him, relief washing over her features in waves. "But there are still people inside the mine." I know." The man gestured to the others emerging behind him, rescue workers, shouting orders, adjusting equipment in haste. "We have teams on the way and we have to hurry," I urged him, cutting him off mid-sentence. "We need to get in there. They don't have much time." One of the workers turned to me, uncertainty wrestling with determination on his face. "I understand. We're assessing the situation. We need to make sure it's safe first." Frustration surged again. Safe? Do they know what's happening to us inside? The thought felt unbearable. "I don't want anyone else to die today," he responded, a hint of empathy slicing through his stoic demeanor. "We can't allow more lives to be lost while we're still gathering intel." Gritting my teeth, I felt the weight of guilt settle deeper within my heart. My thoughts turned inward, a cacophony of choices, paths not taken, and paths irrevocably altered. I couldn't look away from that looming void, just waiting for me to give in. Santiago is counting on us. The thought pounded in my mind, the echo of his laughter fueling my desperation. If they're in there, we have to do something. Tears stung my eyes as I forced my mind from spiraling further. I refused to be a coward, but I also recognized the power of the truth piercing through the haze. Was my fight for sentiment holding back their chance of survival? "Ugh, I can't just wait," I retorted, the frustration boiling over, an eagerness that felt reckless tugging me from within. I turned my gaze toward Marco, pleading with my expression. "We can't just sit and wait. If I lose them, it will be my fault," I said, my voice wavering slightly. Marco stepped forward, his grip on my shoulder firm, grounding me. "They'll get to them, I promise. Trust in them, Pedro." But even as he spoke, the gnawing doubt clawed at me, relentless and unwavering. The chaos around me, voices filled with urgency, awkward shuffling of feet, seemed to blend into a blurred haze, and the promise of hope felt absurdly distant. I drew in a shaky breath, the taste of metal on my tongue as I fought to quell the storm inside. But despite the swirling tempest, I knew there was only one way I could push through this moment:
to let go of what I couldn't control and trust in the efforts of those who could. So I stood with my heart heavy while rescue teams moved forward, scanning the area and calling the trapped ones' names. Each shout cracking like thunder across the landscape. It resonated deep within my very soul, haunting and unwavering, snatching at the threads of hope that still clung desperately to my heart. I shoved my fists into my pockets, squeezing the fabric until my knuckles turned white, waiting for the moment, waiting for hope to rise like dawn breaking through the night, waiting for the sound of voices to return, the light to guide me home. And in that harrowing silence, I prayed. The chaos of the rescue effort engulfed me like a storm, each voice woven together, creating a fabric of urgency that tugged at my frayed nerves. "Help is coming!" I shouted to no one in particular, my voice trembling under the weight of my fear. It was a feeble reassurance, more for myself than for anyone else. The lead rescue worker, a sturdy man with a chiseled jaw and gray-streaked hair, turned to me, determination etched on his face. "We need your guidance," he said, pointing towards the yawning darkness of the mine. "If you have any idea where they are, we'll follow you." "They're trapped to the left." My voice took on a sharper edge, urgency coursing through me. Memories rushed back. Santiago's laughter and the promise of protection ignited a fire within that propelled me forward. We moved towards the entrance, my heart thumping in time with each step, anticipation mingling with dread. The clawing shadows of the mind crept closer, threatening to pull me under once again. I couldn't let that happen, not when there were still lives in peril. "Call out to them," I urged, ready to break the suffocating silence. The lead worker nodded and raised his voice. "If you can hear us, respond!" For what felt like an eternity, silence reigned. But then, a faint sound seeped through the darkness. A muted cry, desperate and filled with anguish. "Help, please!" "That's it!" My heart soared at the sound, each second amplifying the weight of hope. The cries echoed through the cavern.
"We're coming for you!" With urgency surging through my veins, I pressed forward, and behind me, I felt the rush of the rescue team cascading into action. The layout of the mine was etched into my memory, the paths I'd taken, the corners turned, and each step felt like reclaiming a piece of my lost hope. "Stay strong, we're almost there!" I shouted into the void, pushing fear aside and focusing on the beings still alive behind those unforgiving walls. As we navigated the dimly lit passages, every ripple of sound grew sharper with anticipation. "Keep going," the lead worker urged, spurring the team onward as they worked to clear away rubble that seemed to have waited an eternity to be disturbed. Then the flicker of light emerged ahead, a soft glow fighting against the shadows. My breath caught, hope blooming within me. "Hang on!" I yelled again, my voice a rallying cry, bridging the distance between us. When at last we reached them, a surge of overwhelming relief washed over me. Several faces emerged from the shadows, their eyes wide with exhaustion, but alive with determination. "Pedro, is that you?" One voice pierced through the chaos, filled with both fear and relief, sending warmth cascading through my heart. "Yes, it's me!" I fell to my knees, reaching for them. I felt their hands grasp mine, tenuous but firm, a connection made stronger by the trials we had all endured. The rescue workers sprang into action, their confidence bolstering the fragile hope in the air. I could hardly contain my joy as more bodies stumbled from the darkness, freed from their confines. Each saved face felt like reclaiming a part of myself, a piece of love and life tangled in the threads of fate. "We made it," I whispered, my voice barely audible amid the clamor, tears pricking my eyes as I looked at the weary faces illuminated in the soft glow of the headlamps. When Santiago finally emerged from the shadows, his eyes filled with disbelief and relief, I surged forward to embrace him, pulling him close.
In that desperate moment, I whispered against his ear words I hadn't said in too long. "I'm here. You're safe." The weight in my heart began to lift, releasing the pent-up despair that had taken hold. Every frantic heartbeat unleashed gratitude, a thankful acknowledgement that we had weathered the storm together through darkness and fear. Emerging into the faint light of safety, surrounded by hugs and cries of relief, I felt as if love had broken through the abyss that had threatened to swallow us whole. Just above the shouts and cries of celebration, I imagined hearing Santiago's laughter trilling in the air, a reminder that no darkness could extinguish the enduring light of love and family. In that moment of joy, I realized that even amidst despair, we had found our way back to one another, proving that hope could flicker through even the darkest of times.